Hello and welcome to this week's weekly wrap up for Friday, February 28th, 2025. As you know, we have a lot to cover, so let's get started. This week's shows included Colin Plume, CEO of Noble Gold, one of our chief sponsors, Greg Manarino, good friend Nick Benyamin, and our channel owner Chris for a monthly channel update on all things currency related, as well as the shipping status of our commemorative silver coins, which we went into detail, and we are going to make restitution on those for both the customers and the winners to make it right for the delay in time that it took to get to you folks. Our apologies once again. This coming week, for the first week of March, we have good friend Ian Farrar, co-branding partner with Purium. Steve Previch making a return, CEO of New Fire Energy. We're going to talk about all the new quantum energies that are coming out. Good friend Ellie Weber and good friend Joe Williams. So we always look forward to those dialogues as well. Here are the headlines. President Trump brought an early end to Thursday's speculation around his favorite for the 2026 Florida gubernatorial race on Truth Social, endorsing loyalist Republican Byron Daniels for the job. The president's backing of Donald's is likely to have a chilling effect on the race in Florida, a state Trump won by 13 points in November, and that he has called his home since 2019. Trump over Truth Social urged Donalds to run and called him a, quote, highly respected congressman and a total winner who's been tested at the highest and most difficult levels. The Russians are preparing to announce an alleged victory in the war against Ukraine and NATO on the 3-year anniversary of their full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th. Russia is prepared to declare a victory in the war against Ukraine by the specific date, 24th of February of this year, the third anniversary of the beginning of the full-scale war. Moreover, these plans may also include a Russian victory over NATO. The Russians have consistently told the truth that they are fighting the alliance in Ukraine. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said earlier this week in an interview with conservative talk show host Dan O'Donnell from the White House that we do an audit every year of Fort Knox, and added that, quote, all the gold is present and accounted for. So how much gold is there? The U.S. apparently has over 147.3 million ounces stored at Fort Knox in Kentucky. Based on the current prices, just under $29.50 an ounce, that is worth about $435 billion. However, that is only a little more than half of the government's gold stash. According to the Federal Reserve, the U.S. currently holds about 261.5 million ounces of gold overall, with sizable portions in deep storage and vaults in Denver and West Point, New York, as well as a chunk of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Cue the scene of the robber stealing the New York Fed's gold in Die Hard with a Vengeance in the movie. So the total amount of U.S. owned gold is worth a little more than $770 billion at current prices. Now, according to the U.S. Mint, a depository currently holds 147.6 million ounces of gold bullion, which accounts for a little over half of the total gold presently held by the federal government. While Musk plans his trip to Fort Knox, Canadian company Equinox Gold announced on Sunday it would acquire all outstanding shares of fellow Canadian gold mining company Calibre Mining. Reuters reports an all-stock deal valued at US $1.8 billion aims to benefit from an upcoming Canadian output as gold prices reach record highs. Troubled high street fashion chain Quiz Clothing is set to close more than one-third of its branches after crashing into insolvency. The company, known for an affordable party wear, recently called administrators after struggling to turn around a decline in the business the past few years. The chain counted about 65 standalone stores and dozens of concession outlets, employing roughly 1,500 people. A deal to rescue the brand will reportedly see 23 of the stores shuttered, along with 200 employees being laid off. Kash Patel had the floor cleared at FBI with staffers told to pack up their desks. Yesterday, when he first arrived at the Bureau headquarters, to some people, he was sending a bit of a different message, because what I am told by 3 people familiar with the matter is that before he arrived, all the support employees on the 7th floor, where the director's office is, specifically the executive assistants and people who move papers around, the bureaucracy, were told to pack their desks. They were being reassigned, and they were to be removed from the 7th floor. And then when he arrived with his own team, the director's suite was sealed off and no one else saw him, essentially assuming command. Starbucks Corporation is cutting 1,100 support partner roles, as well as several hundred additional open positions as it works to streamline its structure by removing layers and duplicate roles. The news was announced early Monday by Chief Executive Brian Niccol, who emphasized that the cuts will not affect in-store teams or investments being made into expanding store hours. DOGE revealed Thursday that public school districts burned through hundreds of billions of dollars in federal COVID-19 relief funds on expenditures that did little to help students. Schools have spent nearly $200 billion of COVID relief funds with little oversight or impact on students, read a DOGE post on X. The Elon Musk-led cost-cutting initiative highlighted more than $500,000 in spending on just 4 projects deemed wasteful. A much-loved home decor chain is set to close up to 20 locations as it works to stabilize its flagging business. Kirkland's Home announced its shock plans to reduce its store count in an update to investors. CEO Amy Sullivan said in a press statement that the firm was working to aggressively cut costs. She said, following a comprehensive review of the entire store footprint, we have identified an initial list of approximately 6% of our stores that do not meet the profitability standards. President Trump said in a post on social media Sunday that Dan Bongino, a conservative talk show host, will in fact be deputy director of the FBI. Bongino will accompany Kash Patel, who was recently confirmed by the Senate as director of the FBI. Trump said Bongino was named to the role by Patel. The position does not require any Senate confirmation. President Trump's administration said on Sunday it was placing all personnel at the USAID and Foreign Assistance Agency, except for leaders and critical staff, on paid administrative leave and eliminating 1,600 positions in the U.S. An earlier notice sent to staff and reviewed by Reuters said that about 2,000 U.S. positions would be eliminated. Travelers flying to Greece on February 28th should expect major disruption in their journeys. Air traffic controllers will join a nationwide general strike, which will see all commercial flights in and out of Athens Venizelos Airport canceled for 24 hours. The airport, which typically handles over 400 flights daily, is the biggest and busiest airport in Greece and is the country's main international gateway. It is also a major hub for many European and international airlines. A new push to change American school hours gains momentum. National movement to change school start times is gaining momentum as sleep experts highlight the crisis of student sleep deprivation. Research is showing that most high school students clearly are not getting enough sleep. President Trump is trying to lure an $8 billion infrastructure project back to the U.S. with promises they can begin almost right away after former President Biden killed the deal. President Trump intends to revive the long-dead Keystone XL pipeline, which would travel between Canada and Virginia, carrying upwards of 830,000 barrels per day of oil into the U.S. Talking to Truth Social on Monday night, the president said that the pipeline was viciously jettisoned by the incompetent Biden administration and should come back to America. He added by saying, "Get it built now." Several U.S. states are aiming to end daylight savings time after President Trump pledged to put an end to Americans changing their clocks. Some states have been fighting to do away with the practice even before Trump weighed in on the annual event late last year. Hawaii and Arizona have never observed daylight savings time, and Arizona stopped doing so in 1968. The U.S. Senate passed a bill to make daylight savings time permanent in 2022. However, it failed to pass in the House. Rubio, now Secretary of State, has continued to push for permanency in the change, and Elon Musk has also expressed his support behind it. Kia is recalling more than 137,000 of its vehicles due to a potential issue that can cause damage to the vehicle's engine. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA is reporting federal safety regulators published a recall after learning the piston oil rings may have been manufactured incorrectly, which results in engine failure. According to the online February 17th NHTSA post, the issue can also potentially cause a fire, increasing the risk of crash and/or injury. President Trump said he is starting a program to offer residency and a pathway to citizenship to investors who can pay $5 million, offering a new avenue for legal immigration, even as he carries out a sweeping crackdown on illegal immigration. Trump said the program, dubbed the Gold Card, would launch in 2 weeks, adding that he did not believe his administration needed to secure approval from Congress. The full scope of the plan and how it would be implemented was not immediately clear. Howard Lutnick said the move could replace the existing EB-5 program, which allows immigrant investors to acquire green cards by investing a certain amount towards a business in the U.S. President Trump additionally has signed an executive order aiming to make healthcare costs more transparent for patients. His ruling directs regulators to force healthcare providers and insurers to publicly disclose their prices, the idea being to make it easier for consumers to shop around for better deals. This move marks a more aggressive approach to boost compliance with regulations Trump introduced in 2019, which providers have only half-heartedly been following. Trump has advocated for insurers to tell consumers upfront the actual prices for common tests and procedures, believing that it will inherently drive down the costs. Healthcare prices have traditionally been veiled in secrecy, determined through private negotiations among doctors, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, and insurers. The Little Mint Inc., the parent company of the Highway 55 Burgers, Shakes, and Fries restaurant chain, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on December 1st, suffering from cost and labor shortages. Fried chicken fast food operators didn't escape bankruptcy courts as Popeye's franchise RRG Inc., which operates 17 locations in Georgia, in February of 2024 filed for Chapter 11 protection, citing underperforming locations for causing the company's distress. Kohl's will shut down 27 unperforming stores in the U.S. in weeks, and bargain hunters are rushing in to grab last-minute clearance deals before the doors shut for good. The department store chain will wind down operations at the locations in 15 states by the end of April at the latest report. On Reddit, one customer said, a store worker had said, we have had a big sale for 2 months, starting at 50%, then 70%. We are down to just 5 racks left out of the whole, and they're at 90% off. The closures come amid a broader retail shakeup, with experts warning that up to 15,000 physical storefronts could shut down nationwide by the end of the year, double the 7,000 that closed in 2024. According to Newsweek, citing Core Site Research and Time Out, the U.S. saw 7,325 store closures in 2024. This year, the number is set to nearly double, with an estimated 15,000 store closings. And retailer Macy's is by no means immune. 2025 is the year that Macy's will bid farewell to a number of its stores. According to a January 2025 press release, 66 Macy's locations will be shut down this year as part of a strategic move to return to a more profitable and sustainable sales growth. A federal court in Washington has ordered CVS Health and its pharmaceutical benefits manager CVS Caremark to comply with a demand from the FTC and produce documents related to an antitrust investigation. As part of the order issued by the U.S. District Judge John Bates on Monday, the healthcare giant is required to furnish documents created before the end of 2023 by February 28th and turn over additional records created in 2024 by the end of April. The order relates to an FTC demand in 2023 for business records from CVS in relation to a federal investigation into the alleged anti-competitive conduct of the company's pharmacy-related operations. I've long said in many investigations that we should take them to court, wrote FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson, adding, the law is clear, complying with our orders is indeed mandatory. Walgreens said it had entered into a settlement agreement with the telemedicine provider Everly Health Solutions, as part of which the pharmacy chain operator will pay the company $559 million over a contract dispute for COVID-19 testing. The settlement, payable within 2 business days, comes after a judge in Delaware recently ruled against Walgreens' bid to set aside an arbitration ruling. Walgreens had faced paying a substantially higher amount, nearly $1 billion. Ferdinando's, Focacceria, and Carroll Gardens, New York, abruptly closed its doors last weekend after 120 years of serving up Sicilian classics like rice balls and panelle sandwiches. With little notice, it would be manja manja no more. Owner Frank Buffa said his age and physical woes were behind the decision to call it a day, even as he holds out hope the iconic eatery will have a second life after his own arrivederci. Gold, as you know, has become one of the most important metals on the planet. For millennia, it's been used in jewelry, art, and currency, capturing the collective imagination as a thing of wonder. Gold's association with royalty and wealth has inspired explorers and treasure hunters alike, who put themselves at risk for a chance to strike it rich. As such, here are the top 10 countries at present that hold the most gold. Coming in at number 10, Uzbekistan, gold reserves holding it at 1,800 metric tons. Canada, with gold reserves at 2,300 metric tons. Peru, 2,300 metric tons at number 8. Iraq, coming in with gold reserves at 2,400 metric tons. Indonesia, at 2,600 metric tons. Number 5, China, gold reserves 3,000 metric tons. Number 4, the US with gold reserves at 3,000 metric tons. Number 3, Zimbabwe with gold reserves at 5,000 metric tons. Number 2, Russia with gold reserves at 11,100 metric tons, and Australia at the number 1 position with 12,000 metric tons to date. And bear in mind that El Salvador has recently discovered gold reserves in excess of $3 trillion. Warner Brothers Discovery Inc. is closing 3 video game studios and halting work on a highly anticipated Wonder Woman title in a bid to boost its profitability of its interactive entertainment business. Monolith Productions, Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego are being shuttered, according to a memo to staff viewed by Bloomberg News earlier this month. Bloomberg reported that the Wonder Woman game was in trouble and that the Warner Brothers Games unit was facing difficulty in 2025 following the underperformance of last year's Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League, Multiverses, and Harry Potter, Quidditch Champions. Current and former employees blamed the weak slate on indecisiveness and a lack of vision under President David Haddad, who stepped down in late January. Tropicana Orange Juice, or Tropicana Company, founded in 1947 by an immigrant from Sicily who developed a process for freezing concentrated orange juice, is in major financial distress and is headed for bankruptcy. Tropicana Brand Groups, which owns Tropicana, Naked Kavita, and other juice drinks, has seen sales and profits deteriorate in recent years. The company's revenue slipped 4% last quarter, and its income dropped 10%, according to DebtWire, a financial services publications. Actions from its owners paint a much more dire picture. PAI Partners, a European private equity firm that took a controlling ownership stake in the companies 4 years ago from PepsiCo, recently provided a $30 million emergency loan to Tropicana, showing that they are a lender of last resort and are not confident that any value remains from their initial investment, said Tim Hines, the head of credit research at DebtWire. PepsiCo, which still owns a minority stake in the company, also said it wrote down the value of its investment by $135 million last quarter. Weekly jobless claims jumped to 242,000, more than expected in the latest signs of an economic softening. I don't think we're going to have a choice, Elon Musk said in a quote, predicting that universal income will eventually be high, but fears that people will feel, quote, useless. In a benign scenario, probably none of us will have a job, Musk explained, emphasizing optimism despite the disruption. But in that benign scenario, there will be a universal high income, not a universal basic income. There will be no shortage of goods or services. That shift from basic to high and universal income is critical. Musk believes that AI and automation will drive down the cost of goods and in turn dramatically boost productivity, creating abundance. In other words, everyone will have access to whatever they need, and poverty as we know it will dramatically diminish or decrease and be removed altogether. Lyondell Basel Industries will lay off 345 workers at its shuttered Houston refinery on April 17th, according to a filing with the Texas Workforce Commission. There are around 400 Lyondell employees working at the 263,776 barrel per day capacity Houston refinery. About 70% of them are hourly employees represented by United Steelworkers Union. Reuters reported on February 18th that Lyondell Houston refinery layoffs were expected to begin in mid-April. A Lyondell spokesperson did not reply to a request for comment. B&G Foods has recorded impairments across a group of 4 brands, charges that helped push the U.S. manufacturer deeper into the red last year. The company booked charges of $320 million as it were related to an intangible trademark assets on its Green Giant, Victoria, Static Guard, and McCain's brands. B&G Foods said the charges reflected partial impairments of each brand and added net sales and contributions to the company's operating results for each of these brands, having not met the company's expectations. The group posted a net loss of $251.3 million for 2024 versus one of $66.2 million a year earlier. It also took a $70.6 million impairment charge in the first quarter for a reduction in goodwill within its frozen and vegetables reporting unit. The company adjusted net income for fiscal 2024 and was $55.7 million, down from $73.9 million in the fiscal year of 2023. President Trump says he's revising a Biden-era grant allowing Chevron to operate within Venezuela on Wednesday. Trump detailed the decision in a lengthy post on Truth Social, stating that the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, had not upheld his end of the bargain. We are hereby reversing the concessions of Joe Biden that he gave to Nicolas Maduro of Venezuela on the oil transaction agreement dated November 26 of 2022, and also having to do with electoral conditions within Venezuela, which have not been met by the Maduro regime, Trump quoted. Beyond Meat Incorporated announced it's laying off of 6% of its staff, adding to the list of consumer companies that have trimmed their workforce within recent days. The El Segundo, California-based company said it will cut 44 employees. It's also halting operations in China, which will result in about 20 job cuts, or roughly 95% of workers in that country. The moves are an effort to reduce costs and strengthen the company's financial profile, according to a statement on Wednesday. The big question hanging over markets this week is whether economic growth is going to keep powering ahead this year. The latest indication is that a slowdown may be in the pipeline. Comes from WPP, the world's biggest advertising company. It said that revenue is likely to fall this year and that it has already dropped in North America in the fourth quarter. The London-listed firm's American depository receipts dropped 16% when the market opened. Unfortunately, this week, there have been a string of consumer-focused companies that have issued guidance that investors found disappointing. Home Depot's outlook was worse than expected. Domino's Pizza said that U.S. consumers are hesitant. Donut maker Krispy Kreme shares are down 35% over the past 5 days after poor results on Tuesday. And all of that coincides with the biggest drop in consumer confidence since August of 2021, as well as in February. Consumer spending makes up 2/3 of the economy, so shoppers' willingness to buy things proves to be a critical component for the economic outlook. The good news is that signs of a consumer downturn are still only from surveys, which can sometimes be poor predictors of actual spending or based on anecdotal evidence from companies. The Atlanta Federal Reserve's GDP now estimates for first quarter GDP product stands at 2.3%, which is decent. The unemployment rate is still historically very low. Flight logs and a lot of names of prominent figures who socialized with Jeffrey Epstein are scheduled to be released this Thursday, said Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General. She said her department was working diligently on protecting the personal information of more than 250 victims connected to Epstein, who took his own life in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. Ms. Bondi said she hoped to release a lot of flight logs and a lot of names with a lot of information on Epstein. In an interview last Friday, when asked on Fox News if the Justice Department would be releasing a list of Epstein's clients, she said, quote, "It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump." Ocado is to cut hundreds of jobs in its technology teams as part of the loss-making online grocery specialties efforts to reduce costs using AI to help with research and engineering. The company, which employs roughly 20,000 people, said AI had helped improve the productivity of its engineering team, thereby enabling it to cut 500 roles across technology and finance divisions. Ocado had already reduced its headcount by 1,000 in the last financial year. And that concludes the headlines. Now for the precious metals and commodities. As of the time of this broadcast, gold is down slightly to $2,891 to $31.75, and Brent crude oil up slightly to $73.91. Goya Foods CEO and President Bob Unani announced his departure from the Hispanic-owned New Jersey-based food company on Monday. Unani, who also was an executive producer on the film The Sound of Freedom, recently teamed up with President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, in order to help locate trafficked migrant children throughout the initiative, Goya Cares. He served as president and CEO for nearly 20 years and worked for Goya Foods as the president. Jack in the Box, San Diego-based company fast food chain, needs a new leader after its CEO of 5 years announced his resignation on Monday. Darren Harris, who has served as CEO since 2020, has accepted a new position outside the restaurant industry. The company said he will stay on with Jack in the Box as a consultant until March 14th. When Harris took helm of Jack in the Box, the company was at an inflection point. The company's previous CEO, Leonard Coma, was at odds with franchisees. After Jack in the Box pivoted its model and significantly reduced the number of companies owned and operated restaurants, franchisees called for Coma's resignation. And that takes care of the weekly resignations. Now on to the weekly commentary. Folks, we told you this before, we will say it one last time. We sometimes have to educate our guests with the right line of questioning. Some will get it, some will not. Some have to toe the narrative for their own audience. Had you even considered that? Also, you have to realize how many times what they tell us offline is vastly different than what is said on camera. Folks, I don't think you call the mainstream media and complain about the shows they have. So don't do that here. If you don't like one of our guests, simply don't watch them. You know the pattern. If it's not agreeable to your spirit, that's fine. Just don't watch and leave it for someone else. But please don't complain, because that isn't a workable solution and it helps no one. It's a low frequency of thinking and it only ultimately keeps you stuck. Also, folks, don't let others take advantage of you. Don't take advantage of others. Protect and guard your heart and time and discernment wisely. It's going to be invaluable where we're headed. That does it for this week's wrap up. As always, if we have any major updates, we'll bring them to you. Otherwise, have a great and safe weekend as we quickly climb into the end of the first quarter of this year into March. God bless. Take care. Goodbye for now.